Hi there, BookTube. It's Roz, and it is late October, and I'm still very much embroiled in my head in the joys of Victober. But nevertheless, I've started to think, what am I going to read in November when Victober has come and gone, and I'm bereft? And I thought I'd share my November plans with you now. I'm sort of had it in mind to avoid any sort of strong commitments to sort of reading events in November because of, recovering from Victober in the best possible sense. There are a couple though, two of which have the most appalling puns in their names. One is No-Vember, as in read books about dinosaurs, and the other is Dr. No-Vember, read books about spies and espionage. I'm going to take part in one or the other of those two. You'll find out which later on. The Read What You Own challenge starts in November, and of course I always associate November with non-fiction because of non-fiction November, although that's no longer an official thing, but I always have to read some non-fiction in November to sort of honour it. I mean, I read non-fiction most months, but it gives it an extra push. Also, there are some sort of longer, year-long things going on that I'm reading for. Reading the Globe is one, of course. Endless drama, reading plays, and Historathon, and the Hardy read-along hosted by Jen. Now, this month's book for the Hardy read-along is this one, Return of the Native. And I wasn't going to read this. This in November because I have read The Return of the Native before, and my resolution with the Hardy read-along, which is to read all of Hardy's books in publication order, is that I would only join in for the ones that I haven't read previously. But it's been Victober, and I've been having such a happy time, and I always have a bit of almost like a Victober hangover, where I can't bear to not have at least one 19th century British novel in my reading plans in November to sort of extend the Victober pleasure. And Victober this year has also really reminded me of how lovely it is and interesting it is to reread a book that you read a long time ago and discover how you and the book have changed and how much of it you remembered or didn't remember. What do I remember of Return of the Native? I remember having an incredibly strong sense of place, Egdon Heath, where it's set. The cover of this really kind of epitomises that, and also that it was quite full of drama and excitement. So we shall see if it sort of matches my memory. Now, reading the Globe, in the contemporary fiction strand, we're down to just two books left, and the November one is this, The Understory, by Saneh Sangsuk and translated by Poopoksakul. And I'm quite excited about this one. I mean, I've been excited about all our Reading the Globe contemporary strand books, but I know that Sangsuk is a really revered author in Thailand, and I've never read anything by him. And so I'm quite, I really am very motivated to do so. The what's this about? The main character is a monk who's age 93, who's also a storyteller, and he tells stories to the children in the village where he lives, and stories that kind of bring together folklore and facts from his long life, and sort of and in that kind of shows how life has changed, I suppose, in Thailand, in rural Thailand, and through his lifetime. Sounds good, doesn't it? Do join us. I'll put a link in to the Discord service below. Not too late to get in a Reading the Globe choice if you haven't yet this year, or if you've done some and could be a moment to dip back in. So there we go. I've got two other books in translation that I'm planning to read this month. The first is book 2 of the Calculation of Volume series by Solvej Balle, translated by Barbara Haveland from Danish. Tilly and I read book 1 of what is expected to be a 7-book, a septology, that's the word. And it's a couple of months ago, we both loved it and said, we have to go on to book 2. We have to go on to book 2 to see what happens next. This is kind of like a Groundhog Day type story, but a little more thoughtful, perhaps, than that. Well, not perhaps, definitely more thoughtful than that. And I'm going to read it with Tilly again, but also with my sort of online reading friend Ian Powell. And if you have read any of this series, and in particular, if you've read book 1, as we have, you will understand why Tilly and Ian and I are planning to start it on the 18th of November. The second other book in translation that I'm reading this month is called Rosa Mistika. The author is Euphrase Kezilahabi. It's translated by J. Boss Rubin from Swahili. It was banned when it was first published in 1971 in Tanzania. And once it became available in Tanzania, and it became a kind of a real kind of a sort of almost seen as one of the sort of founding books of modern Swahili literature in East Africa. And but it's not been available in English until this past year when this translation was made. And I'm absolutely fascinated to see what it's like. And I'm reading it with Schombri's Books has like a Patreon book club that reads, a book a few times a year, and this is the November choice for that. And so thank you, Sean, for sort of giving me the extra shove to read that, which sounds fascinating. It's not the only book by a Tanzanian author, as it happens, that I'm reading in November. This is the other, Theft by Abdulrazak Gurnah. Now, this is Gurnah's new novel, came out this year. He was born in what is now Tanzania. It was actually Zanzibar when he was born there. He actually had to flee in 1971, and he doesn't write in Swahili, although that was his first language. He writes in English and always has. He, as I say, he's been in the UK for 50 years, I suppose. He's become much better known since he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2021, though I'd read a couple of his books before that. Funnily enough, well, not funnily enough, really, I'm also reading this with, as a kind of like a buddy read with Schombri's Books and with Tilly. We will undoubtedly make a Zoom, the three of us, about this one. So wait for that. It could be a while before it comes. So that's books in translation and books from Tanzania. Then I'm going to read another relatively recent release. I think it possibly came out at the end of 2024, and that's Night Swimmers by the Irish author Roisin Maguire. It's her debut novel. It's set in Northern Ireland in 2020. What happened in 2020, we all know, don't we? It's set in a coastal village where an older woman called Grace runs an Airbnb, and runs an Airbnb despite rather hating the visitors that come and stay there and visit her village generally. And sort of recently bereaved Evan comes to stay at her Airbnb, and COVID lockdown hits and plot ensues. It sounds lovely, and it's for my in real life book group, and I have a feeling it's one of those sort of book groupy sort of books. Fingers crossed. Now, I'm also going to read two kind of older works of fiction this month. One is old, not as old as Hardy, but from 1937. It's by Virginia Woolf. It's The Years. Why am I reading that? You will know if you follow this kind of channel vaguely regularly that I've been working through all the Virginia Woolf sort of longer novels and novellas that I haven't yet read, filling in the gaps. And this is the final piece in that jigsaw, because it's the last to say of her novels and novellas that I haven't read, and it was the last one that was published in her lifetime, although Between the Acts was published posthumously. I'm reading it with Jo Smith. It's by Virginia Woolf. I don't need to know anything about it because I know it will be beautifully written, challenging and wonderful. Yeah, because it's Woolf. The other sort of not recent book that I'm reading, novel that I'm reading, is a lot more up to date than the years, and that's this one, Slow Horses by Mick Herron. And I feel like I must be kind of like one of the last people in the English speaking world to read a book by Mick Herron or to watch the series that was made about the Slow Horse series of books. Slow Horses is a book about a team of spies who have been sort of relegated to Slough House to work kind of behind the scenes because they've in some way sort of disgraced themselves or messed up. And the alert amongst you will have spotted that, yes, it's Dr. No-Vember, the spies and espionage readathon that I'm taking part in by reading this one. And thank you to the hosts for because this has been sitting on my shelf for I don't know how long, and I know it's going to be enormous fun. I've heard how much I'm sure to enjoy it, and yes, so thank you particularly to Mark of Booktime with Elvis, whose inspiration Dr. No-Vember is. Of course, this also works for the Read What You Won't challenge, doesn't it? As do these two, in fact. So that's getting things underway for me, which is good because I am one who buys more books than I read, and so the Read What You Own challenge is a healthy thing for me. It was created by Criminoli, and there's a few other hosts, one of whom is Greg, and of Another Big Befoul Reads, and it was Greg that kind of reminded me that it was happening and starting on the 5th of November. So I'm in. I'm also using the Read What You Own sort of challenge to inspire my possible choices for non-fiction November, the unofficial non-fiction November that I and lots of other people in which we will be doing. One that I think I will almost certainly read is Question 7 by Richard Flanagan, which has been lurking on my Kindle for months and months and months. I really liked Flanagan's novel, The Long Road to the Deep North, and Question 7 is a kind of a memoir that he wrote kind of alongside or inspired by the writing of that novel, because it's a memoir about him and his, but also about his sort of journey back to looking at his father's history and then the history of around World War II and so on that kind of was his father's experience, but he put into The Narrow Road to the Deep North. Did I say The Long Road before? The Narrow Road, I'll get it right in the show notes for you. So it's apparently it's unusual, it's profound, people say it's moving, and as I say, it brings together memoir and history and a kind of slight fictional or imaginative element. Yeah, sounds right up my street, doesn't it? Also off my shelves, so for the Read What You Own challenge, is this one. Now, both Question 7 and this also mean that I will be fulfilling the last quarter bit of Historathon, to read a work of history from 1820 or later. And Black and British, A Forgotten History by David Olusoga is something that I've been meaning to read for some years. I got this copy of the 2021 sort of new edition sort of earlier this year, so again, months ago. I actually got it when I heard him speak, and he kindly signed it. He's a bit of a hero of mine. I love David Olusoga. He's such a good historian who brings such sort of warmth to his erudition, and it is sort of, I know this will be brilliant. I also know it's rather fat and rather dense, so my plan is to start it in November but not expect to finish it. It will, however, be a kind of like a lovely follow-on from the Thinking About the British Empire that I've been doing during Victober, because the challenge that I set to look for sort of the signs and impact of the British Empire in people's Victober reading, which has been for me, a really stimulating challenge, and I hope and think for other people. On a slightly lighter note, another possibility for both Read What You Own and non-fiction November is this one, and that's Findings by Kathleen Jamie. Now, Jamie is a Scottish poet who also writes non-fiction books like this. I think she might have done 3 or 4. This would be the second one that I read if I've read this. When I read the first one, which I love so much, I kind of rushed out and got second-hand copies of 2 more by her, and then just never got around to them. What kind of book is it? She kind of writes beautifully and kind of brings together kind of like travel and nature writing with little bits of sort of history and kind of psychogeography, would you call it, kind of thrown in. Really enjoyable. So I hope that I might squeeze that into November. And that will put me about 6 books into the Read What You Own challenge, which is brilliant. I think I'm only going to go to try to get to 20. The idea is to set yourself a number of books to read before you let yourself buy anything new, and I think I'll probably go for 25. That's probably realistic and doable for me. I thought I might have to rush out and buy something, though, before the 5th of November in order to be able to read this month's book for Angelia's Endless Drama read-along. But happily, it turns out it's available free online, so I don't even have to do that. This month's book, in case you want to join us, is the Thanksgiving play, which is like a kind of a satirical comedy by Larissa Fasthorse, and it's about 4 well-meaning but rather crass and insensitive actors, kind of like theatre and education kind of types, who decide to try and create a play for school children that brings together sort of the traditions of Thanksgiving, Turkey Day, as you call it, and Native American History Month. And we can imagine how that works out, can't we? And so that's my November plans, pile of possibilities. I mean, I will read most of them, probably all of them. As I say, this one will probably roll into December, and that's fine. Have you read any of these? I always like to hear your thoughts if you have. Are you planning on joining in with either Return of the Native and the Hardy Read Along, or the Understory, Reading the Globe, or, maybe, anything else that you think I ought to know about or might enjoy, or I love to hear your plans too. So that will do for now. And my next video will be some kind of Victober-y wrap-up.